Exit Rich. We did take a little bit of a holiday break, and I did get some comments back from you guys saying that you missed the podcast. So we're back, and we're back with a very exciting guest. And as always, if you comment, if you ask really good questions and we read them on the air, then I will send you 3 chapters of my book, Exit Rich. So today we have a very special guest. His name is Brian Shimmerlik. And Brian Shimmerlik launched his first company in 2003 at the age of 19. I love that, Brian, because so many entrepreneurs are starting younger and younger and younger now, which is amazing. I think Shark Tank might have a lot to do with that. But he started at the age of 19 out of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Upon graduating with a BA in finance and accounting, Brian worked in JP Morgan's Treasury Department, quantifying the firm's interest ratio risk, and was then responsible for valuing the bank's investments in venture capital and hedge funds, as well as conducting due diligence. That sounds exciting. It sounds like somewhat fun. Was that fun, Brian?
No, it was not fun.
All right, so it wasn't fun. So Brian doesn't do that anymore. In 2011, ladies and gentlemen, Brian quit his career in finance because he said it wasn't fun anymore. So he stopped doing that. And then he did an internship for the CEO of Conductor, a New York City-based search engine optimization platform, which is completely different than what his degree was in. Brian launched Vengo. Hope everybody has heard of Vengo. If not, you're going to hear about it today. And then so he launched Vengo in 2012 and has led the company for over a decade, leading all aspects, including fundraising. Oh, we should talk about fundraising, strategy, management, and product. Vengo currently serves as a leading digital out-of-home media platform operating over, 53,000 screens. 53, that's a lot. 53,000 screens that reach 6 billion people every single month. That's huge. 6 billion audited monthly impressions. Let me say that correct. Brian received his MBA in finance and marketing from NYU, earning a merit-based scholarship for his second year. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
There's a lot to unpack there. Tell us, what were you like as a little boy? Because you were quite successful running a huge conglomerate. What was Brian like as a little boy?
Yeah, I think I always had it. I was the kid selling lemonade at the end of the street. I cut all of my mother's flowers in the yard and sold them at the end of the street.
Oh, wow.
She was not thrilled with that.
Yeah, I was like, what did mom say about that?
Yeah, not thrilled, not at all. But yeah, I always had it. I was selling candy in middle school out of my backpack. I love the hustle. I love business. I love understanding what people want and how to give it to them.
Yeah, and how did you get that understanding? Did you grow up in a family of entrepreneurs? How were you able to gain that understanding at such a young age?
There is a history there. Like my grandfather came to the country, with a couple dollars, not speaking English, and 60 years later had his own accounting firm. So there's definitely that thread of entrepreneurship, like in the genes. And then part of it, yeah, I think it's just innate. Just caring about people, paying attention to people, and just wanting to be self-sufficient and be my own boss.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so it sounds like you were encouraged at a young age to be an entrepreneur, whereas many individuals are not encouraged. They're encouraged like the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, where you go, you get a good education, you get a job, right? Well, that's good. So I really would like you to share some of well, let me ask you real quick, back in 2019, what was that first business?
Back in 2003, the first business was at college. At college, this was, pre-Fresh Direct. like, very, very early Facebook, kind of like the 1.0 internet. Um, I started a grocery delivery service. And I was in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, and you had this massive population of people on campus and no high quality groceries. So kind of just worked to connect a grocery store a few miles away with the campus population. And it was just such a good experience to try and get out there and make, get some wins, but make some huge mistakes and ultimately fail and keep learning and keep going.
Wonderful. So share a little bit of the story of how you came up with the idea for Vengo Labs. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so after my career in finance, as I realized just this is not making me happy, this is not how I want to spend my life, I went back to business school. And my goal was to start something, right? Like that was the point. And I kind of looked, while I am an entrepreneur, I'm also kind of risk averse. And so I looked at business school as having 2 years to kind of play around and try to start something. And if I fell on my face, if I failed miserably, I would still learn something and I would still be better qualified after business school to go and get a really good job. And so I let go of that kind of fear of failure and I was aggressively looking to start something. And the original like seed of the concept was I was in New York City. This was, almost like Uber was just launching. And so
What was she launching? I didn't catch that.
Uber.
Uber, okay.
And so I was in a New York City taxi and I was like, this is a really great marketing opportunity. And I don't feel like this is being captured. You had this huge audience just traveling around Manhattan all day, every day. And so I came up with an idea that there should be a vending machine inside of the New York City taxi. And I started talking to people about it, telling everyone who would listen. And I found there was a business plan competition run by the New York City government. It happened that when I found it, the application was due the next day. I got it done. And out of 270 companies, we took down the whole thing. We got $17,000 of seed capital. And most importantly, we were on the inside cover of the New York Post. And we got some attention, we got some traction, and I started working on the business, putting together a team from there.
That's incredible. I noticed an echo. Are you hearing an echo, Brian, on your end?
It sounds good on my end. How's it sound by you? Do you want me to put in some headphones?
I'm the echo. I hear it on my end. So yeah, let's try that and see if that kind of clears that up real quick.
Okay, you got it. Yeah, you sound good on my end.
Cool. Let me see if that fixes the echo. Is that, yeah, that, it sounds like that corrects the echo. Can you talk a little, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just plugging in here.
Okay, I think that, well, let me see if that got rid of the echo or not. Sounds like that got rid of the echo. There's still a little bit. My tech guy's right here. Can you fix it?
Yeah, let me see if that fixes it.
Okay. I still hear it on my end. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but everybody, even the best of the best, Brian here, we all have technical difficulty from time to time. It's kind of like Steve Jobs on that big platform showing, what was he showing at the time, Brian? He was showing the iPad or the laptop, I forget, the Apple phone. And remember, everything shut down on him.
They say the more important the demo, the worse it goes. But if it's all the same by you, I'll keep my headphones out. And yeah, it's
Okay.
fun of going live.
The echo's back, so the headphones work better.
You got it.
Sorry about that, but it's a huge echo.
All right.
Okay, that
Where were
sounds
we?
better. So if you want to go ahead and go back to your story about the taxi cabs and how you beat government, right? You said government was doing this and you raised, I think it was 17 million in seed capital.
Well, all time we've raised about 16 million.
Okay.
But yeah, we got started with 17,000 of seed capital from the New York City
17.
government, and then we just kept making progress from there.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So just for the audience, what does Vengo do?
So Vengo is in the business of digital screens. We connect those digital screens that you would see around at the gym, at the office, in the elevator, at the grocery store. We connect them to be connected digital properties. And we help, using our software, source advertising to go on those digital screens. So as recent as a few years ago, digital screens were kind of manual, fragmented, and disconnected. And now we're help driving the industry forward for them to trade as if they're on your computer, on your phone, connected TV, and use technology to power the industry to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you've done a pretty good job. It sounds like you guys are the leader in the industry.
Yeah, we're one of the biggest in the country by screen count, and we've grown over the last couple years from 1,000 screens to 53,000 screens. So we've been at this for a long time, and there's been various iterations and pivots. And we've in 2020 we went all in on kind of this pure software monetization play, and it's been extremely successful. And it's the high margin software business that is growing exponentially.
Wonderful. All right, cool. Well, what made you go from finance to this? Now, I know you said about the taxi cab and everything else, but usually when people graduate with a finance degree, they're typically sticking in the finance. Now, I know your finance background probably helps you run a company, run your company, but what made you make that huge switch from finance to marketing, really?
It was really about happiness for me. I looked around.
Happiness. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Happiness. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not about happiness, like what are you doing? What's it about? And so, yeah, I had a very stable, secure, decently financially rewarding job in finance. But I was miserable. I wasn't happy. I looked around and the people around me weren't happy. My boss wasn't happy. His boss wasn't happy. And so I didn't see the path. And, I kind of had a kind of coming of age moment of like, is this it? Is this what it's all about? Um, and I felt like I could do better. And so, that's kind of what led me to go back to business school and start my career in entrepreneurship, because I just feel like, life is short and you get one shot at it. And you need to be doing something where you're learning, where you're challenged, where you're meeting interesting people, and ultimately that drives happiness for you, and however you do that for yourself.
Got you. And why do you think everybody is so miserable there?
I think in a lot of industries, it's kind of just, you go in and you have to kind of put on this work personality,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not kind of incentivized and challenged. And so, I really felt that in finance. Like as I walked in the revolving door, like I had to put on my fake, work personality. And I think that is really hard to find happiness when you're doing that. And I think kind of the startup world and kind of this like new age of, you know, I guess, millennials and younger kind of approaching work and what it should be like. I think that's a real key, is that you need to be able to be yourself
Mhm.
and have the same personality that you do at home and at the weekend, and kind of integrate all these aspects of yourself, integrate life and work.
I agree 1,000%. Um, and it's very different than the baby boomers year when it was like baby boomers years when it was all work, all work, all work, right? Very little family integrating. And I think baby boomers are starting to listen more to Gen Zs and maybe the millennials. But Steph has a question here. He says technology has evolved a lot since I was a kid. So I was wondering how long do you stay innovative in today's landscape? I would imagine it's always changing, right?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Stefan. Um, it's constantly changing. I mean, every year it's changing. And so our job is to listen and kind of try to separate the signals from the noise, right? Because there's tons of things that get headlines but don't ultimately have sustainable value to our clients. And so I think in our industry, it's moved so rapidly from 2017, essentially 0% of screens out there in the market were connected and trading programmatically, or kind of the automation of buying and selling, the opportunity to run an ad on a screen. Today, it's up to about 30% of the market. And each year, we're seeing new features come, like dynamic creative. So we'll run campaigns where it'll pull a sports score and update every time it runs, or you could target people based on that it's raining today. And, if that is the right fit for your product. So continuing to kind of connect and evolve, it's a constant thing.
I bet. What type of so you one of the biggest things that stood out to me is that the screens are now in over 27,000 nationwide locations, right? Is that correct?
No, we're up to
Oh,
53,000.
well, guess what? Then this is outdated information by AI. So we need to get this updated. How many locations? 53,000?
53,000, yeah. So we're one of
Wow.
the biggest networks of screens in the country. And we're in every state and most of kind of the key verticals being, airport, college, etc.
What strategies did you employ to get this nationwide, exposure in all these locations? And what year did you guys start?
We started a long time ago, back in, working on it in business school, and then launching our seed round in 2013.
Okay.
And so we got started deploying vending machines with digital screens, and we got over 1,000 out there. And it was just an expensive and challenging business to scale. And so we became very good at using our software to monetize the screen. And we realized we were doing that for our own network of screens better than anyone else was. And so the real kind of launching point where it's taken off is we went around to other media companies and said, hey, we can help you make money in this new way using our software.
Mhm.
And instead of charging people for the software on a fixed rate, a monthly fee, like most SaaS companies, we said, we're going to give you our software.
Mhm. Kind
Um,
of like I'm going to give you a vending machine, right?
exactly the same, Michelle. And
Yep.
so we then will go out and we'll use our technology and our sales team. We have a big human sales team as well. And we'll go out and we'll monetize those networks and keep a percentage of the revenue that we generate for our clients. And so the ease of saying yes, the ease of adoption, and kind of creating some tools to make it easy to connect into our network, our ad server. That was kind of the driving force of growing so quickly over the last couple of years.
Understood. Okay, cool. So I'm sure okay, so you started this company basically in 2013, but you worked on it way before that in business school. And I'm sure it hasn't all been easy. I'm sure you've had lots of bumps and roads and objectives and challenges you've had to overcome, right?
Yeah, of course. No, there's been tons of mistakes, tons of learning experiences. And I think like the biggest one kind of builds on what we just spoke about, kind of that pivot from a vending machine company to a pure software company. You know, when I was starting out, it was already known that SaaS companies, you know, cloud-based software companies is what's attractive. It's how you make money. I am a contrarian, and so I purposely went out and did the exact opposite. I started a hardware business. And I thought, you know, if nobody's starting hardware businesses, then, you know, that's where I want to be. And while we executed it really well, ultimately, the financial valuations, the scalability, the margins, and ultimately the exit opportunities, it wasn't there. The investors were right, but it took me kind of learning that for myself to really take it to heart and make the move that we did.
When you say starting a hardware business, there's hardware businesses everywhere. So can you clarify that?
Yeah, I mean, like we were literally deploying these physical assets. And so someone has to, you know, the metal has to be bent, it has to be shipped, someone has to take it to the field, connect it in. And so what we're doing now is we're leveraging screens that already exist out in the world. And we can just connect in through software as opposed to physically deploying them. And that's been that magic key to unlock the growth, the
Mm,
margin, and the exit opportunities.
mm. So that was a huge challenge. What other big challenges did you have to overcome?
I mean, everything, right? So as I think about the
See, you guys,
early,
he says everything, and he didn't quit. He fell forward, not backwards. Because it's never over until you quit. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, you know, we've hit every obstacle out there, and just try to learn from it and adjust and move forward, and try to treat each day as if we're starting fresh and we're not weighed down by our mistakes in the past, and we're starting fresh with the assets that we have in terms of people, technology, relationships, and just doing what I think is best on a go forward basis. And that's how we've so drastically changed the company from this network of 1,000 vending machines to you know, this monetization layer for digital screens everywhere across the country, and soon we're launching overseas, you know, soon to be around the world.
Did you ever come to a moment where you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I give up. I can't handle it. Did you ever get to that moment like a lot of entrepreneurs do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's tough
So what kept you
moments.
going?
There was
Hmm.
tough years.
Hmm.
Um, there were times when yeah, I would have given up for no exit and just said, you know, I'm good. Um, how did I keep going? I think it was just really wanting to control how I spend the rest of my life, right? So I don't think of it as just this company. I think of what I'm doing as the platform for me to continue on. Like, I'm not young, I'm 40 years old, but I look at it as, you know, what am I going to be doing until hopefully, you know, I'm 100 one day. And
Or,
so
or you might be planning a big exit, you know? I'm going to
it,
send you my book, Exit Rich.
perfect, perfect. Yeah. So I think why did I keep going is I just committed to myself to give it everything that I've got. And when I had those moments where I wanted to quit, I just learned how to take care of myself, how to take a break, how to clear my head, how to relax. And, you know, to me, if you can unplug and relax for 48 hours, Saturday, Sunday, no problem. I can come Monday morning fresh, ready to go. And I think the people have a lot to do with it also. I have incredible partners that I've been working with since the beginning. And so, you know, if it's not enough to do it for myself, I also want to do it for them and bring them to success.
Yeah,
And,
that's a big why, because it's not always just about you. It's about figuring out what's that why that will keep you motivated and keep you in the game and keep you fighting, right?
yeah. And I'd like to address Neil's question because I think this is one of the most important things.
Hmm.
Fear of failure.
So that's
And
really the question. How does a fear of failure play into your business decisions?
yeah, and fear of failure, fear of judgment, whoever like the voice in your head is telling you you're not good enough, you can't do it, you should quit. Who do you think you are trying to go outside of the lines and start your own business?
Hmm.
I would say letting go of that is one of, if not the most important thing that you can do, right? There's like this famous quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I just love. And essentially it's saying, don't worry about the people in the stands, right? It's the person who gets in the ring and is willing to fight and is sweaty and is bloody. And they are the ones that earn respect.
Hmm.
And if you are willing to fail, then you can accomplish anything. And I think that I really embrace that. And I couldn't be more important.
Yeah. What's his name? The greatest fighter of all time. Uh, um, oh my gosh, I just went blank. Who's the greatest fighter of all time? Greatest boxer of all time? Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah, the greatest boxer, sure.
Yeah, and Muhammad Ali says, look, they can knock you out, but they can't knock you down. They can
Sure.
knock you out, but they can't knock you down. You always got to get back up and keep that fight. And so many entrepreneurs quit too soon, way too soon. There's a book out there that one of my very good friends wrote called 3 Feet from Gold, whereas people quit when they're so close to the gold. You really got to have grit and you really got to stick in there. And you have to have a why that's bigger than yourself. So we have,
Yeah.
would you agree? Yep.
Yeah. You
So
gotta get back up.
Hayden says, how have you capitalized on your marketing and finance background into your decisions for,
At Vengo. So
it was spelled wrong, so it threw me off.
no problem. So
It was Venmo.
yeah, I'm gonna give an maybe unpopular answer.
Sure.
I don't think it helped much. I don't think you can learn the tools to be a successful entrepreneur in school. Um, it's just from doing,
Mhm.
and it's from the combination of doing, testing, learning, trying, and relying on mentors who are a little bit ahead of you and can guide you that you trust.
Mhm.
Not listening to everyone, but just picking your spots.
Mhm.
So that's why I do think it's important to start young. There are people in business school who kind of said, yeah, I'm going to pay attention to my classes, and then maybe when later I'll start a business.
Mhm.
That's not the entrepreneurial mindset, right? It should just get out there and learn.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you have to get out there and do it. They unfortunately they don't really teach entrepreneurship in school, and it's kind of like even when they teach marketing in school, these kids come out and they don't know anything. They know theory, but they don't know tactical, right?
I
And
tend I tend to agree. They try to teach it in school, and I think for people like me, it provides a nice platform and launching ground.
mhm.
But in and of itself, it doesn't get it done
Yeah, and entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? It's a hard road.
for sure.
So Lindsay asks, COVID forced many businesses to adapt. How did you adapt Vengo's business model during the pandemic, and what impact did this have on the company's growth?
Yeah, so our COVID experience, partly we touched on it in terms of the change from vending to media,
Yeah.
but we had quite the COVID experience. In 2020, we were actually about to exit, and uh, then our revenue was down 63%.
So you were about to exit in 2020.
That's
Wow.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. And you
Yeah,
went down 63%. So this is a good teaching point for our listeners. The worst time to exit is when you're down 63%. The worst time to exit is when you're down at all and your business is trending downward because you're never going to be able to capitalize on that value. So go
yeah,
ahead, Brian. Yeah.
yeah. And to take that even further, there were no exit opportunities at any value in the midst of the chaos of COVID, in the midst of being down 63%.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's our worst 2 years ever.
yeah, so I mean, think about it. Our screens are in colleges, we're in gyms, we're we're in places. And so there were no people. And if there's no people, there's no impressions, there's no media. And so we were in a very tough spot. Um, and I think, I came here into my office every day, and I just thought about, how can I make just a little bit of progress today? Same thing I did when I was first starting. And we turned this disastrous situation into a massive benefit.
Mhm.
So how did we do that? Well, one, because it was so disrupting to our business, it gave me the opportunity to make some changes. And there were changes that I wanted to see in the business
Mhm.
that, because of just that, keep ramping everything pressure, I wasn't able to make such key fundamental changes. And COVID provided the cover for me to do that,
Mhm.
right? It provided me the cover to kind of start over, exactly what we talked about before, leverage the great assets that we have and let go of the things that were holding us back. And since then, it's been rocket ship type growth. And it's just been so much more fun, so much higher margin, and has totally changed our exit opportunities.
How were you able to stay alive though with a 63% decline?
Well, I think, now we're profitable. And so we don't rely on anything to stay alive, and controlling our own destiny is huge.
Mhm.
In 2020, we were not profitable. Um, and so it was really, we were able to stay alive based on relationships, relationships that I had built over the last decade, and people who believed that we're going to be successful no matter what. And so, while maybe pure new financial investors, there was no kind of, you know, lifeline there. But because of the credibility that we have and the relationships, we were able to call in those favors, stay alive, and now, God bless you. And
Thank
now we're off to the races.
Thank you. I think that's the first sneeze I've ever had on a podcast, and usually they come in threes.
Okay.
All right. And then Niall asks, what is an aspect of entrepreneurship, positive or negative, that is often glossed over?
Yeah, I mean, I could rattle off a bunch. I think one is to, I mentioned before I wanted to be my own boss, but that doesn't come with like this just freedom. It comes with a lot of responsibility, right? So my investors are my bosses, my board is my boss, my partners and my team members are my boss. And I think that's something that's really misunderstood.
I
Um,
agree with that 1,000%.
yeah,
When I was a little girl, I always told my mom I would never ever work for anybody because I wanted to be my own boss. And so I've been an entrepreneur just like you my entire life. And now I'm like, I got all these bosses. It didn't work.
yeah, exactly. And then I think just how personal and gut wrenching it is. When somebody leaves the company, um, which we're lucky, it doesn't really happen here a lot. It hasn't really happened much since like 2018, really. But when someone leaves the company, it is such a horrible feeling. It is very difficult to let go of work at night on the weekends and engage in other stuff. And I've gotten better at it over the years.
Mhm.
But I think that's something to know. Like, when you're on the line and it's you and it's your responsibility, um, it's incredibly gut wrenching and challenging. And not everyone's willing to go through that.
Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes with entrepreneurship, and you're right, it's hard to disconnect from that. And you do have to answer bosses, so don't think you're going to go into it and be your own boss because you're not. Any other misconceptions that you see out there that entrepreneurs believe?
Um, you know, I guess that is glamorous. We've raised a bunch of money. We've been on Shark Tank. I still wouldn't say it's glamorous, right? It's hard work, right? Like
It is hard.
yesterday I was training a new seller, a new salesperson at Vengo,
Uh-huh.
and I walked the streets with him. We went from a diner to a deli, right? You know, if you want to do it right, it's not glamorous.
No, it's not. And you still, a lot of entrepreneurs think, oh, I can just hire all these people, hire people who are smarter than me, and just walk away. You can't do that as an entrepreneur. You need to trust, but still verify and inspect what you expect, right? And still sometimes get in the weeds with your people to develop those strong team leaders.
That's
So
right.
you mentioned Shark Tank. Let's talk a little bit about. I wish we could play an episode. But you mentioned Shark Tank. What year were you on Shark Tank?
2016.
Yeah, and the reason I want to talk about Shark Tank a little bit is because number one, we help entrepreneurs get on Shark Tank. We help them know their numbers because one of the biggest mistakes that business owners make on Shark Tank is they don't know their numbers. They have an inflated evaluation, and then they're kind of laughed off the stage, right? And so, tell us a little bit about your experience because you did secure a deal, if I remember correctly, um, with Kevin O'Leary and Lori, right?
That's right. Yeah, one of the biggest in Shark Tank history, $2 million deal. Um, it was a good experience for us. Um, it got us just a ton of attention and awareness. It's great marketing, and when we go in and we sell to big brands and agencies and demand side platforms, they love talking about Shark Tank. So it definitely provides a great platform. It takes up a lot of time, but yeah, I'm happy we did it. Great outcome for us. And I do the same thing. I help people who are preparing for it and get them ready to crush it.
Yes, but it does take a lot of preparation. It is a lot of hard work. But what I really love about Shark Tank is there's no really winning or losing because even if you don't get a deal, the exposure is incredible. And I listen to Shark Tank all the time because I've been in this industry for 23 years. But I can't begin to tell you, Brian, how many times I call up somebody and go, oh my gosh, I just saw your bag, your customized gift bags on Shark Tank. I want to order 1,000 of them. And so I've done a lot of deals with Shark Tank entrepreneurs. Now, since then, you've been able to go out and raise, I think it was over 7 million from famous firms such as was it Cherry Tree Investments, Gary Vanderchuck, uh, Scout Ventures. and hip hop artists and things like that. How were you able to do that? Because there's so many entrepreneurs that are like, oh my gosh, if I just have working capital, if I just had the money, if I, how do I do that? How do I raise the capital? And that's every entrepreneur's number one question. How were you so successful, and how did you get to some of these, big hitters, heavy hitters?
Yeah, I mean, raising capital is challenging, time consuming, and you know, one of the gut wrenching parts of it. As a hardware company, our kind of original form, we needed capital and we needed a lot of it,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons it was so challenging. Um, the secret to fundraising is credibility. It's not overselling, but it's establishing that you are real and believable. And so, if I had one secret to fundraising, it's as simple as, start early and tell investors that you're going to go out and over the next 3 months, you're going to do, XYZ, and then come back after 3 months and say, remember how I told you I was going to do that? I did it, and here's what I learned.
Can you give us
Nobody,
a quick example of that, like one of your three things? One.
yeah, absolutely, right? So, for me, raising our seed round, it was, hey, so I just won this competition and I got $17,000. I'm going to turn it into a team and a prototype. And then following up and saying, hey, I'd love to bring my team by to demo our new prototype.
Mm,
That differentiates you from 99% of the other things that they see in their email that they don't take seriously,
a
right? And
thousand percent agree. What a great approach it is. You just got to stick to it and make sure you deliver. Because if you
yeah,
don't deliver in those 3 months, you got egg all over your face, right?
yeah.
That's incredible. Now, how do you pinpoint? How do you know who to target as an investor? Because like you got Gary Vaynerchuk, you got some big names out there. Did you already know Gary Vaynerchuk? I mean, how do you target these people? And
Yeah, so the best way to target them is to be introduced by someone that they respect. And when I first started out, I thought that was bullshit. I thought that was super unfair and kind of elitist. But the truth is, I've learned that if you're engaged with the space, if you're passionate about seed stage startups in New York City,
hmm.
well then you should be engaging with that community. You should be knowing other companies. You should be going to events. You should be listening to people talk. And you go to an event and listen to a VC, a venture capitalist talk, and you follow up and you say one thoughtful, kind thing specific to what they talked about, and all of a sudden you have a relationship, and you don't, you're not asking for them to invest. You're just building relationships. And so I think through the NYC, the NYU community, um, the startup community, we just networked and tried to help people and tried to follow through on the things that we say, and it just kind of kept growing from there.
Yeah, and I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that startups entrepreneurs do is they go for the juggler too quick. They meet somebody, boom, this is what I need. Here's my pitch deck, right? Instead of building that relationship and really getting to know somebody. And I love, hey, give me 3 months. This is what we're going to do, and we'll deliver this in 3 months. I love that.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that the fundraising is glamorous. Again, it's not. It's not a strategy to success. And if you can, raise, if you can fund your company through your customers, that's the way to do it. Keep the equity, save the time. It's not the answer. It's just something that you may need to do that you shouldn't want to do.
1,000%. So, were you in back in the days? Were you doing, and you might still be fundraising, but were you doing a traditional fundraising? I'll give you some equity for this, traditional fundraising, or did you use any type of other tools like a Safe Notes or something like that?
We definitely did convertible notes, and the safe format for that is fine. And then we've done priced equity, um, and then on Shark Tank we did the venture debt.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think let's address some questions here. We got a few.
Yeah, we do, but we got my questions too.
Okay, Michelle, you run
But
the
yeah,
show.
we can get to a few of these. Let's see. Let's go to Hayden. Your partnership with Viatouch Media to provide data-driven advertising solutions is intriguing. Can you elaborate on the importance of data in the advertising industry and how you guys leverage that? So I could answer that question, but I'm gonna let you do it.
Yeah, I mean, data is important. It's
Yep.
kind of an interesting situation for the digital out-of-home industry where in some ways we don't want too much data, so the push on the internet away from cookies and device IDs is benefiting us greatly.
Mhm.
And so we do not collect personal information from the people at our screens, and that seems to be a good thing. We use data in a few ways to understand how many people do enter our locations.
Mhm.
And, we can tell that based on kind of geofencing the locations and seeing how many cell phones go in without crossing into personal information. And then there's all kinds of partners out there that we work with to look at attribution, footfall studies. How effective are these campaigns?
Mhm.
Which ties us right into another question from Lindsay. Um, Digital out of home is effective, right? These are real people in real locations. They choose to be in those locations. They generally love those locations,
So
and so
let's time out. Lindsay's question is, could you just dive into the answer? Lindsay's question is, can you share any success stories of brands that have really benefited from advertising on Vengo screens? Go ahead.
sure. Um, Yeah, so we've run, thousands of campaigns, mostly for national brands, big household names like Brooks Running or T-Mobile, even TikTok, Target, etc. For example, like Target, if they're opening a new store, they can just type in their zip code and we can target, like, I'm using the word target, but we can access the screens that are in the zip code surrounding the Target store opening. So there's tons of research out there, some specific to us and some general for the industry on how effective this is. Consumers generally like it better than most types of advertising because it doesn't interrupt them. It doesn't get in the way, right? You're not trying to watch a video and then an ad pops up in your face and blocks you from doing that. We kind of show up along the consumer journey. We've personally run some campaigns that we've seen a huge lift in sales directly from our screens in grocery stores and in gyms.
Cool. So who are the industries that advertise with you? It's primarily B2C, right?
Yes, primarily B2C, although, we have office locations and there's some B2B, but it's definitely, I'd say, a lot of retail, a lot of recruiting, a lot of telecom, stuff like that, big national brands.
Okay. And then Steph says, looking ahead, what are your future plans for Van Gogh Labs? And how do you envision the company's growth in the digital out of home industry?
Yeah, I think we now have enough scale where we want to focus on the monetization side. And what's really interesting right now is that we're starting to communicate with different types of buyers who
Mhm.
have never bought digital out of home before. So maybe they buy connected TV or they buy mobile. But now that our screens are connected as if they're a website or a phone, we can run pretty much any sort of video content. So we're starting to run, if a connected TV campaign is having trouble hitting their impression goals, they'll then come to us, and that's opening up like this whole new wave of revenue for out of home, and it's super exciting.
That's awesome. All right, so let's get into some really go-to nuggets that you can add to our audience so they can help grow their business like Vengo did, like you grew Vengo. What does leadership mean to you?
So my style of leadership is servant leadership, and what that means is kind of what we were talking about before. Is I work for everybody. I work for every client. I work for every board member. I work for every investor. And so, my job is to help people succeed. And my job is to give them the support and the resources and the tools to succeed. And that's it. I'm not like a figurehead. I'm not trying to have a glamorous role. I'm trying to help other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's another mistake that entrepreneurs can make from time to time is, I've told many of them, especially some of my doctor entrepreneurs, is check your ego at the door. Check your ego at the door, and don't be so arrogant. You are not your own boss, believe it or not, because if you don't have clients, you don't have a business.
Yeah, high confidence, low ego.
What's that?
High confidence, low ego.
1,000%. If you don't have clients, you don't have a business. If you don't have employees, you don't have a business. You have, right? So, anything else on management and leadership?
I think just to treat people with respect.
Okay. I think one thing we already talked about is how did your exit orientation impact your pivots?
It drove the pivots, right? After that experience in 2020 of seeing kind of no exit opportunities when we were in trouble, it helped drive everything, right? Exit is driven by cash flow. It's driven by margin, and it's driven by growth. And so, I have that in the back of my head with everything we do.
It's also driven about by infrastructure, and we talk about that in my book, The 6 Ps. You have to have the right people and the right seats. The business can't depend upon the owner. Because if it does, then you have a glorified job, not a business. You have to have multiple revenue streams, products, services that you get paid on. You got to have those processes buttoned up. And then you've got to have those proprietary assets. And Vengo has a lot of proprietary assets. And then you've got to have those patrons, customer diversification versus customer concentration. And at the end, you have to have profits. And that's what buyers are buying. They're buying a business with infrastructure. Because we get a lot of owners come to us and say, hey, can you buy my business? And it's them and maybe one or two employees. And the business can't operate without them. So where do you see yourself going in the future in exit? I know that you have to be somewhat discreet here.
Yeah, I think now that we control our own destiny, we control our own destiny. And so I think, we're open to conversations, we're having conversations, but it's really no rush, right? Because if people aren't willing to pay what we think the company merits, then we're like, no problem. We'll just go out and keep executing, keep growing, and stay in touch. So I think controlling our own destiny is such a key step for us and getting to that profitability. We came up in kind of like the golden age of just ramping startups off a cliff, and I really thought like just grow revenue, and now all we care about is margin.
Yeah, I get that. And there's also timing in an exit. Obviously 2020 was the worst time for you to ever exit. I call that a life cycle of a business. Businesses, where do they start? They don't start making millions, right? That would be nice. They start an incubator stage. And only about 5% will make out of incubator into the infant stage and into the toddler and then all the way to death because businesses die. We see that every day. So it's always best to sell your business when you're in your prime because you never know when's the next COVID or when's the next catastrophe, right? All right. So what golden nuggets do you have? Anything in entrepreneurship, your success that you can share with our listeners?
Any golden nugget about anything?
Well,
Wow.
not about anything, about business, about entrepreneurship, about your success, that they can parlay into their business. Because it's always better to learn from people who are successful versus those who are not.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hit on something that we haven't covered yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the people are so important. You know, you don't want to just go find someone that has the skill set that you need. You want to find someone that you have a shared vision with, and that you have a communication with.
Mhm.
And I would not be as successful today if it wasn't for my team. The team is essential, and the relationships are really, really valuable to me.
Mm.
So invest in the people, and treat people with respect.
Okay. I love that. And so, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Um, no, thanks for the great questions. Really enjoyed the conversation. And if you have that kind of itch to start something, let go of your fear of failure and go try it. And I promise that you will learn something.
I love it. Well, you've been an excellent guest. Thank you so much for sharing your success story and your failures because it hasn't all been success. So I truly appreciate you being on the show. You've been a wealth of information. And to all of my listeners and followers, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Exit Rich. And I know that you've got a lot of golden nuggets out of here. So this is another show you might want to go back and listen to. So thank
Thanks,
you again,
Michelle.
Brian. You're welcome. And thank you till next Wednesday. We have another episode of Exit Rich.